Well, hey, everybody. It's movie retrospective time. Here's one that I had been wanting to do for quite a while.
I've never seen this one.
Ever since I saw this back in the late 80s on cable. And I remember quite liking it, but then I didn't see it again for a very long time. And then a few months back, I saw that it was available on Tubi, and it still is as of this recording. This is the 1986 horror comedy Vamp. Now, probably the biggest selling point of this is Grace Jones.
Oh, she knocks it out of the park.
And I kind of feel like, I kind of wish they had done more with her, because they did. I mean, you know, you get Grace Jones in your movie. I mean, you want to utilize that as much as possible.
Yeah.
So she's not in it as much as maybe the marketing would have had you believe. But when, the brief times that she is in the movie, she makes quite an impression.
It's kind of like a female Mr. Barlow if you saw Salem's Lot. She does a dance, she appears, she kills a bunch of people. She doesn't say a whole lot. But it's a great character.
I don't think she says anything.
I don't think she says anything.
I don't think she has any lines. She's completely mute.
When she first appears, you know, we grew up seeing this kind of stuff. You know, this is 80s stuff. And when she first appears, she appears on stage doing a number in a strip club where she does this dance, and she appears in whiteface, basically. She's got...
Yeah.
White, it looks like a goth girl with white makeup, blue contact lenses, like Ronald McDonald red fucking wig, and she starts taking her clothes off, and she's got this white pattern painted on her, you know. And
by Keith Haring.
Yeah, it looks really cool. And when you see her in whiteface, you realize how kind of like Scandinavian her bone structure is. I mean, she passes for a white girl, and with the hair and the white makeup and the contacts and everything. But she's great in this, great. And I wouldn't call her goth, but she was goth friendly. Goth people fucking liked her. She called herself, and I think rightly so, a neo-cubist. Everything she did was real fucking, and it's got a lot of cool visuals, little stuff that she would wear, like Japanese looking, cubist looking shit, and fucking kind of Chinese and Japanese mixed together with Art Deco, and she's got a really cool style, man. Fucking Grace Jones was the shit.
I kind of feel like she's one of those, you know, and I heard somebody else, I think it was on Grumpy Andrew, where he was talking about this, and he said Grace Jones seems like one of those people. She is still alive, actually. She's in her 70s. But she's one of those people who saw her whole entire life as performance art.
Yeah, you definitely see it.
So she comes across in a similar way to how David Bowie did, but maybe like even more extreme. She comes across as like otherworldly.
Yeah, America didn't get enough of her. She was Jamaican, and that being part of like British Empire, she was more in the European scene. So she was hanging out with the European dudes.
I can see how Europeans would be kind of more into this kind of thing. Because like I said, they did put her in a few movies. She was in View to a Kill. Yeah. She was in Conan. Yeah. And, you know, and they utilized her well there. But I kind of feel like, particularly in this, which I would have actually liked to have seen her in a straight-up horror movie rather than this, which is kind of like mostly a horror movie but has some comedic elements in the same way that maybe Fright Night did, although this isn't nearly as good as Fright Night, but this has some similarities with Fright Night too, and, you know, we might as well get this out of the way right now. If you are a big fan of From Dusk Till Dawn, 1996... this is pretty much the same story. And Quentin Tarantino acknowledged that. He went so far, I believe, as to ask the producer of this movie, Donald Borchers, if he would be okay with him like having a production credit on From Dusk Till Dawn, because he basically was like, well, this is Vamp is where we got the idea for From Dusk Till Dawn, because the story is essentially exactly the same.
And the tone is good, like Fright Night and Salem's Lot kind of mixed together.
The makeup in this reminds me very much of Fright Night. It's not, as I said, this isn't as high budget, I feel like, or the production value isn't quite as high. You could tell this is a lower budget than Fright Night, which had come out the year before. Yeah. But the vampire makeup is very similar. And when you see Grace Jones, her character name is Katrina. She's like an ancient Egyptian vampire goddess, queen, essentially. Queen and when you see her at the very end, like before she's dispatched, her makeup, I was like, wow, that looks almost exactly like the makeup for Mr. Barlow from the TV version of Salem's Lot from 1978. So they obviously used that.
In case you don't know, Grace is bald, so she looks like Mr. Barlow when she goes full vampire.
Yeah, because she had like the big eyes, and they did like the same kind of mouth situation and all that kind of stuff.
And I think Grace is maybe 5'8", but she was so thin, she looked a lot taller. A real spider.
Isn't it funny that like I was just reading a few minutes ago Roger Ebert's contemporaneous review of this.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how, it would have been cooler if they'd have put Grace Jones in the movie more. And he said, I saw her at a party once. And he said the same thing. He's like, I was expecting her to be much taller.
She's not.
But she's not. She's just
real skinny.
She gives an impression of being she gives an impression of being very imposing as well. But there's like, she's not any taller than average.
I think 5'7".
Something
5'8".
like that. So a little bit taller than average for a woman, but not super. Like I had the idea that she was like 6'2" or something.
Yeah, she looks like she's 6'1". You think she's like a woman with a size 12 foot or something, But no, she's not. She's a little bitty thing. When they showed her in a shot just for a second, I think they kind of accidentally used that shot because she looked great in it. But you see her next to a guy, one of the male actors, and she's smaller, much smaller.
Yeah, she's
like a little bitty thing compared to that guy.
Which is strange because
she has a real powerful presence to her.
Oh yeah,
and she was always like that. She was hanging out in the scene, and she dated Dolph Lundgren, a bunch of other guys. She evidently only married one of those guys. Everybody thought that she was getting married to everybody, but I think she came out and said she'd only married one dude, and he was kind of like, I think he was a guy from Turkey or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he wasn't even really famous. The rest of them, she didn't marry him. She just dated him. She was just an artist type. Wild character. She would do the damn. I remember her as a kid. She'd be doing the talk show circuits, and she'd show up in basically like a gown you could see right through. They had to kind of censor her, I think, a little bit. And she
have somebody stand in front of her with a cape or some shit.
And she would just laugh it off. She was kind of like a nudist. She did not give a single fuck, and she would go to Hollywood parties basically just with shoes on and shit. She didn't care. Just like
I heard,
jewelry and shoes and maybe like a G-string.
I heard that she was a little bit of a nightmare on the set of this movie because, like many performance artists, she was basically like, "Well, we're gonna shoot the scene when I feel like shooting it." And her very iconic dance, where her character is first introduced, they didn't know what she was gonna do.
Yeah.
They basically just said, "Well, they had the outfit and they had like the makeup and everything," and she's just like, "Yeah, you just like film whatever I do." Yeah. So it's almost kind of like she was trying to do a striptease. It's like a striptease, but it's the weirdest striptease you're ever gonna
She's pretending to give head to a damn statue. Good. It was good.
Fun fact, that statue was actually modeled off Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, okay. That doesn't surprise me.
And as I said, Keith Haring like painted all over it. Yeah. This is one of the most 80s movies you'll ever see.
Yeah, it's good though. It's good.
I mean, it has like the super super green and fuchsia lighting, like the fashions and everything like this. So 80s, but
got a lot of good character actors.
But yeah, that's what I kind of love about it.
It's got the dude from Blade Runner who played Taffy Lewis. He's in. Remember, we just ran across that dude a couple movies back.
That's right.
He, have a drink, drinks on me, pal. He's in it. He plays it down.
Yeah, he was like at a hotel or something like that. He's like he's like in one scene. Or something.
Being pervy and shit. It's good though. It's good. It's good. And they say that dude was a character too. But back to fucking Grace Jones. She was in the U.S. She was actually kind of we knew her as a model, but that's not what she was. She was a recording artist and an artist going back to like '77 in the disco era. Big Studio 54. She was famous amongst famous people. In the U.S., a lot of people didn't know who she was, or she's just some weird chick that would appear. But celebrities knew exactly who she was. She was real popular with them. She was a little ahead of her time for the American market.
A tad.
I think that's what the problem was.
She might still be ahead of her time.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
That cubism shit is a weird artistic. People are like, what? But she was gifted. She was crazy and knew how to entertain.
And it wasn't a put on. I mean, she was genuinely that weird. She wasn't like pretending to be that weird. She actually was that weird.
You would think that she would get along with like David Bowie.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like it's the similar kind of vibe. Yeah. Although she was weirder than him.
Weirder, yeah.
But you know what I mean.
In a good way, though.
Yeah, but in a good way. I don't mean that. So when I say somebody's weird, that doesn't mean it's bad. That
she was just kind of alien.
Yeah, she comes across as very otherworldly. Yeah. So like I said, if you guys have seen From Dusk Till Dawn, but you haven't seen this, you should totally check this out because this is essentially where the idea for the movie came from. Because check this out. This is what happens in Vamp. And like I said, this came out 10 years before From Dusk Till Dawn. So the first part of the movie is essentially like a frat boy comedy, a little bit.
Yeah.
So you have two roommates, and they're pledging a frat. Their names are Keith and AJ. Now, these are played by Chris Makepeace, who I recognized, and then, like, I looked up his IMDb. I recognized him from Meatballs. Do you remember that movie? From 82, I think it was, but, like, about a summer camp. I remember him from that. He was in My Bodyguard as well, which I think I only saw once or twice. And the other guy is Robert Rusler, and I recognized him from Nightmare on Elm Street 2. He was also in Weird Science, not a huge role, but he was a little bit in that. And he was in Stephen King's Sometimes They Come Back. So the two of them are pledging this frat, and they tell the frat, okay, if you let us in, we're gonna, they're having this party, so we're gonna go get you a stripper. So to do that, neither one of them has a car. So then they press into service the nerdy Asian stereotype kid, played by Getty Watanabe, who most famously probably played Long Duck Dong in 16 Candles. At least in this movie, he's still kind of like a little bit of an Asian stereotype, but at least they let him use his real voice, like his real American ass voice, instead of making him talk like, you know what I mean, like over the top, like he did as Long Duck Dong. But he's in this like wearing... I mean, the outfit he wears in this is just ridiculous and hilarious. Like that pale lemon sport coat thing, and then it's like a Hawaii. Is it a Hawaiian shirt or some kind of like crazy pattern? Yeah. So he's like really nerdy and dorky.
Everybody's a stereotype.
It is, yeah, pretty much.
Everybody.
And he has a car, and he says, "Okay, well, I'll let you take the car for free if you guys hang out with me and pretend to be my friend for the week and take me on your little adventure to go find this stripper."
Yeah.
So that's essentially like the first, 15, 20 minutes of the movie.
Me and Jenny are laughing like, strippers? How many of them you want?
That's what I was like, is it really this much of a rigmarole to like not find? Well, now, to be fair, they did, we have to go get a stripper after he called like a few girls that he knew and was like, hey, we need somebody to be a stripper, and they all hung up on him. But I was like, yeah, you just need a stripper. I'm like, okay, we gotta like let's go down the list.
How about some cam girls and porn stars?
You need some of those?
We got right there. Okay.
But yeah, so we thought that was kind of funny that it was like this big big fucking rigmarole.
That was 84, right?
86 this was. 86 this was. So they go down to, it's not specified where this is. I think they shot it in California, in LA somewhere. But it's almost kind of like a mythical type place, because wherever the college is, they say that they're out in the middle of nowhere, and then they show them driving, and it looks like fucking Vermont or some shit, like with all these green rolling mountains. But then they come to the city, and the city, when they get there, you know what this reminds me of too, this movie? It reminds me of a little bit of After Hours. Do you remember that? Yeah. That Martin Scorsese movie, which I think came out in 84, I want to say, where it's just kind of like this guy, and he's like real straight-laced, right? And like he ends up like doing this crazy night where all this crazy shit kind of reminds me of Something Wild too, that I'm thinking about.
I'd have to see it. It sounds familiar.
But yeah, so, and like where everything goes wrong and all this crazy shit happens like during this one night, and that's essentially what this is.
There seems to be a lot of movies that are kind of like that, though.
I guess so, yeah. But that's the vibe that this gave me, and like that's what was kind of like.
I don't exactly know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it, but it just occurred to me that that's kind of similar. So they go to this city, which is kind of, like I said, like a mythical sort of city. It's lit like, because I think I made a joke at one point. I'm like, man, it looks like fucking Mario Bava's making a movie in here, because it looks very like it has these really bright, like saturated colors. They use like a lot of green lights and like fuchsia and purple, and just everything looks almost kind of like comic booky a little bit. It looks like a dreamlike type of city. Now, the first time that they kind of interact with some of the denizens of this city, which I guess is supposed to be, this is like the downtown area, so it's all like seedy and everything. And then you get this gang led by Billy Drago, who I feel like they should have put him more in this too, because he's fucking weird looking. He's like, he has like a gang of albinos, and at first you think that they're vampires, because one of the girls that he's with like opens her mouth and her teeth are all fucked up, and they look kind of like fangs and everything.
Yeah, no, she's just a crackhead.
But I'm pretty sure that they established later on that gang are not vampires.
Yeah,
I thought, but
I think they were supposed to be vampire hunters, maybe.
See, that's what I thought, but I don't think that was really resolved. Yeah. So that's one thing that I thought was a little strange, that they kind of introduced this gang.
Yeah, there was probably a scene that got cut.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah. But yeah, so they kind of interact with this gang, and they're like running away from them. So they end up at this nightclub where pretty much the bulk of the rest of the movie takes place. And it's a strip club, so there's a lot of seedy, naked ladies and various,
really kind of half nude. Now, actually, yeah, well, most of them aren't even half nude. Most of them are in things that would actually amount to a bikini or with a G-string.
I mean, you do get to see titties, though. There's titties.
There's not as much of it as you think, though.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's happening far away, so you can't see, you know what I mean? You can't really see the details. And then they'll show women stripping on stage, but really, it's a glorified bikini. Sometimes they're topless.
Yeah.
But it's mostly an illusion. There's topless scenes, but they're just not really that big of a deal.
And I will say too that I kind of wish, I think this movie only cost like $3 million to make or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. I kind of wish that they had like a little bit more money to do like some cool set design around this nightclub, because it's very, it's fine, but it's very like workmanlike. Yeah. They seem to use like the lighting gels and stuff like that as kind of their main focus, or they're kind of, I actually kind of like that. I really like those, Giallo. Super saturated, like that Giallo looking lighting. I'm really into that.
Here all the time, 24/7.
That's what it's always on. I never even turn it off.
Don't even turn the shit off.
Yeah, it's I like it.
They don't suck any power.
Not really.
No, not to speak of.
So I just really like the look of that.
Yeah.
So they go to this place, and then there's this girl who works there. And she introduces herself as Amaretto. That's her stripper name. But she's also a waitress. Yeah. Now, fun fact, I thought that name sounded familiar. She's played by DeDee Pfeiffer. That's Michelle Pfeiffer's sister.
Okay.
I think this was her first movie.
All right.
So she's kind of like cute as shit in this. But she approaches Chris Makepeace's character and insists that she knows him. Now, at first, you were like, she's just trying to get a bigger tip. She doesn't really know that guy. She does, though, it turns out. But you don't find out how until later on, and it's actually kind of cute. But she's very, very, like, Madonna in this one. She's got kind of like her kind of frizzy blonde hair on one side, and it's kind of all in little braids on one side. I think she wears, like, a big, like, tiger stripe big ass jacket at one point, and the fucking leggings, and it's all very like Material Girl type.
Yeah, half the cool girls look like that.
They did though. That's what I'm saying. This is so, like I said, this is the most 80s movie that I think you might ever see. Yeah. So they're like, okay, score. We got to this place. There's all these strippers. And so then, Grace Jones's Katrina is introduced in this bizarre ass, dance that she comes out and does. She's got like the wire things around her titties, and it's a crazy outfit. And like she's got like Keith Haring, like body paint all over, and like this big red wig.
Big red.
It's like wedge shaped.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know what? Now that you're thinking about it, it's kind of like an African wig. You like from like like off an African sarcophagus.
Because she's supposed to be
like an African queen.
Yeah, because they do show later on, like in her dressing room.
Is what I mean. Yeah, Egyptian.
In her dressing room, they have like an Egyptian, like a sarcophagus thing, except it's kind of like her face. So they're implying, they're implying that she's like thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Because she has all of these strippers and all of the people that work in the club are either vampires or are thralls.
Yeah.
I have to say, too, that the guy that's like the MC or the manager of the club, the guy in the pink tux or the pink suit or whatever, that guy's great. He's just a thrall, right?
Yeah.
He's essentially like what's his face from Dracula?
Renfield.
There you go. I don't know why I can remember that, because there's some point like he has like a little bowl on his thing with roaches in it, and he just like eats them like they're nuts and everything.
That's the shout out to Renfield.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, and I had to check the dates. Is this where the idea of fucking Akasha, Queen of the Damned, came from?
Wait a minute. What year did Queen of the Damned the book come out?
I don't know.
Because this movie came out in 86.
This is like a movie that Anne Rice would have liked. She liked all vampire movies.
I can't remember. Well, I mean, Queen of the Damned the book might have come out before this. I can't really, because Interview with the Vampire came out in the early to mid 70s.
There's a relationship. This was either lifted off of Queen of the Damned or
vice versa.
And we know that a lot of things out of Anne Rice vampire fucking concept that she used came from Blackula and Scream, Blackula, Scream.
Yeah.
And she said that. You know, so
yes, we're not like just making that.
Not making this shit up, no. So this is a movie. You know, Rice would have fucking loved Grace Jones, so you know she saw this movie.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's just that I can't remember like what year the book
was.
Queen of the Damned came out.
There's a relationship there.
But yeah. So essentially the one guy, AJ, he goes in the back to go and talk to Grace Jones, aka Katrina, to try to get her to come to this frat party and strip at it. Not surprisingly, she decides she's going to eat him instead. Well, she doesn't eat him. She bites him and turns him into a vampire. Yeah. So that's kind of like where some funny shit happens later on. Because here was another thing that was a little bit confusing. Then there's like a chase because the other two guys, like the other two college students, are looking for AJ because obviously he's gone missing, and they enlist the help of Amaretto, the stripper, and so they're looking for where he went. But at one point, like while they're running around, and they're also running from that albino gang with Billy Drago in it too, like through the streets and through the club, and there's all this other kind of shit going on. And eventually they twig onto the fact that the club's all full of vampires. But at one point, Keith like falls into a dumpster. And AJ's body is in there. But then later on, AJ comes back and he's like, hey, what's up? I'm a vampire now. And then, but I actually kind of liked the relationship between Keith and AJ, like, you know, their friendship. And I kind of wish they'd gone a little bit more in that. They did it a little bit, like where AJ was kind of like, you know, look, I'm a fucking vampire now. Like, all I want to do is eat you, and I don't really want to do that because you're my best friend and all this other stuff. And I kind of wish they had done a little bit more with that. They did a little bit with it, but not a lot. And I kind of wish they had done more with Grace Jones because she's in it, but she's not in it a lot. And I do kind of...
She's not in it enough.
She's not in it enough. I mean, you have Grace Jones in those fabulous fucking outfits and the crazy makeup and shit like that they did on her, like, the vampire makeup. And I wish they'd done a bit more with it. And I kind of wish that, like, when she gets, you know, killed at the end, I kind of wish that had been, like, more of a big thing. Because it seemed like too easy. Like, how she got killed was a little bit too easy.
And she needed dialogue. Grace Jones can have dialogue. She I don't know why they didn't give it to her.
I don't know. I liked it better that she didn't talk because it was almost like she almost like she didn't need to. It was I got the impression that she'd been around for such a long time that she could like convey her wants and needs to all her thralls and her lesser vampires like without even having to say anything. Like everybody was just so
I can see
you know what I'm saying?
That's one good option. Although I think being able to speak would have been good too. Because you see, where they got that from is they got that from Salem's Lot. Yeah. With the TV version of Salem's Lot. The guy who played Barlow, really evidently, he wasn't the kind of guy you could give speaking lines to, but he looked fucking great. Yeah. So they used him, and I think he did a great job. But because he didn't have speaking lines, they had to kind of cut short a scene that happened in the book where Barlow tests the faith of a priest with the boy's life hanging in the balance, and there was some dialogue there, and fucking that would have been much better to have that dialogue in that made-for-TV movie, where that priest had to test his faith, and he loses, and fucking Barlow eats him, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of two minds on that. In a lot of ways, I think in this case, in Vamp and in the TV version of Salem's Lot, I kind of feel like it would have made the character seem less scary if they talked. Because it's that demystifying thing. In the book, in the book Salem's Lot, I didn't mind that he talked, obviously, because you need to convey information. But when you're seeing it, I think he's more scary and more mysterious if he doesn't talk.
That shit was to memory. I haven't read the book in a long, long time. And if I seem to remember in the book, the priest loses that bet and dies. But somehow the boy gets away. I don't remember exactly how it went down. Do you remember?
No, it's been ages since I've read that. I haven't read that since I was a teenager. Yeah. Okay. So honestly, it's been so long since I read that book that I didn't even remember that Barlow talked in the book.
Yeah, he could talk in the book.
Which I guess makes sense because Stephen King was riffing on Dracula, and obviously Dracula could talk.
He didn't say much, but he could talk.
Yeah. But, like we were saying, I kind of like that in Vamp, Grace Jones doesn't talk. Because I felt like she doesn't need to.
Right. Okay.
I just wish that there had been more of her. Right. Because she's so cool looking, and every time you see her in this, she has a different thing going on. And they did actually, like I said, the makeup in this is not as fantastic as Fright Night because, that had a much bigger budget. But honestly, I really like the vampire makeup that they did on her. I think it looked really cool. And like I said, I think it was actually absolutely influenced by Mr. Barlow in Salem's Lot, because particularly at the end, when you see her at the end in her full-on like monster form, when Keith gets her with the arrow and then they stake her and everything like that, she looks just like, what was that actor's name? Reggie. Shit, man, now I can't remember what it was. Or Nader or something like that. I can't remember what his name was. But the makeup looks very similar to that. They
did it on purpose.
Yeah, I think they did that on purpose as well.
And it was a good choice. She looked like a female Nosferatu. She turns into a damn Nosferatu. Looks good.
Yeah. And honestly, I even kind of like when she dies at the end and they do this weird thing like where her face kind of like melts off, but it looks like this weird black tar kind of stuff, but it's coming like, it looks like it's going up instead of down, so I don't know if they ran it in reverse. And then it looks like a skull underneath, but not quite.
Looks more like a cat or something.
It looked like more like a cat. I don't know, it's hard to explain.
Or a cat lizard or something.
And then she like basically turns into a full-on skeleton.
And then it flips you off.
And then, and then the skeleton arm moves. It goes like that. And I was like, because I told you it's a comedy. Yeah. Although...
It's not that much of a comedy though. It's got horror in it.
That's what I'm saying. I kind of feel like it has a similar kind of balance to Fright Night does, whereas Fright Night, it's a horror movie, but it has like comedic elements in it. I think this is the same thing.
Kind of like Reanimator.
Yeah, because I mean,
similar mix.
Yeah, it's kind of like. Because sometimes you have a movie that's just like a straight up comedy, but then it has horror elements in it. Yeah. This, I think, is a horror movie with comedic elements in it.
Yeah, because the college kids are like something out of damn Porky's.
Yeah, and it definitely does. And in a way, that's kind of like From Dusk Till Dawn, too, because From Dusk Till Dawn, the first third or half of it starts out as kind of like a crime thriller type thing until they end up at the titty twister. Yeah. And then it just goes full-on action horror vampire movie. Right. Whereas this starts out as kind of like a frat comedy. Yeah. And Animal House. Kind of like Animal House or something like that. And it has like a little tinge of like horror at the beginning where they imply that, these two kids are going to get hanged or whatever. Yeah. But then it's like a fraternity hazing.
Yeah, and it's got a great score.
Yeah, I really do like the score of this.
They did
a
good job. It's got good composition, good color palette, good score, good act. She said it's a low-budget movie. You can't really tell.
Not really. They did a good job with what they had.
Yeah, I'd put it up there with Fright Night. About like that.
And the guy that directed this, Richard Wenk, I think this was his first full-length movie.
Okay, yeah, he did a great job.
And I don't think he did too many after this. I think he did some like later on, like in the 2010s and stuff, if I'm not mistaken. But
I had never seen the movie. I just never saw it. I don't know why.
Because you would think. Mm-hmm. As I said, if you're really into like 80s movies, and like I said, if you're really like From Dusk Till Dawn, then you should totally see this, because this is absolutely where Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez got the idea for that.
I used to see it when I was a kid. I used to see it at the video store, and I never rented it because I just didn't like the cover. It said Vamp, and it had teeth,
the lips and the fangs.
And I was going, that's a chick flick.
It's a chick flick.
But there's a new cover for it that has that same cover, but then it's got Grace Jones. It's got Grace Jones on it, and she's in that fucking
in a stripper outfit.
It's not a stripper outfit.
Not really, but in her opening scene,
it's like a goth. It's like goth whiteface with the red wig, and I would have rented it. I was like, oh yeah, because you know what I mean. I didn't know who was in it. I didn't know what it was about, or I didn't understand the motif. There's no photography in the original cover. It was just a black and purple with like Vamp and then fangs, I think, with lips. It just kind of...
red. It was just red and white and black.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember it looking real basic. I remember seeing it, but now I realized I never chose it. And I should have. I would have liked it.
Yeah, but just because of the cover.
I thought comedy... You know why? Now I'm remembering it. There was some cheesy vampire movies out around that time, like Love at First Bite and shit, that I couldn't stand at that time. If I were to watch them now, they might be a little bit better. But remember they had even like vampire parodies going on.
Remember Once Bitten? Yeah. With a very young Jim Carrey? Yeah. And Lauren Hutton?
It was that kind of shit. So I thought.
I like that movie.
I thought it was going to be movies like that, so I never got it.
See, that's what I'm talking about, because Once Bitten, I would call that, and I like that movie, actually. That's a movie that I would call a comedy that had a couple of horror elements, but it's mostly a comedy.
Right.
This one is mostly a horror movie, but just has funny stuff in it, funny shit in it. But it's mostly a horror movie. Yeah. So that's kind of like where the difference lies. I would not, and I think that they marketed this as a comedy.
Yeah.
I think even the tagline said like a frightening comedy or something like that. And I don't think I would go that far. No. I would not call this a comedy. It has funny shit in it, but it's mostly a horror movie.
I would have marketed it along the lines of Fright Night and Reanimator.
Yeah, and, something like that.
That kind of stuff. More of a horror movie.
Yeah.
I would have liked it. And I didn't realize it had so much nudity in it, man. If I was a teenager, I'd have been all over that shit.
That's what I'm saying. That's what shocked me that you hadn't seen this, because I'm like, not only is Grace Jones in this looking badass as fuck, but I'm like, there's tons of naked ladies in it. The whole thing takes place in a strip club.
We didn't know.
The whole thing takes place in a strip club, pretty much.
We didn't know.
Can I just give a shout out to the one line? I love the guy, like the guy in the pink outfit, where he's like emceeing and he's introducing all the strippers, and the one stripper that was dressed kind of like a construction worker, and he introduces her saying something like the engineer or the constructor of major erections or something like that. Funny. And it's like, that line just made me like laugh out loud. But yeah, so if you haven't seen Vamp, definitely check it out if you're into 80s horror sort of comedies.
Just vampire or any horrors.
And vampire anything. And let us know what you think about it. It's actually on Tubi at the moment for free. Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, like I said, not the best. I mean, it's not as good as Fright Night, obviously, but it's along those same lines.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen all the other 80s movies, just put this one in there with it in case you haven't seen it. It's along that.
Yeah, I feel like this one gets a little bit forgotten about a little bit.
You're going to watch the same old 80 movies over and over again. They're new ones.
Go watch a different one.
There were ones that were forgotten that were good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, right now, at least if you have Tubi, if whatever country you're in, it's on there for free as of this recording. So go check it out. And that'll do it for this movie retrospective. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.